If Hollow Knight left that void in your chest after finishing it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That feeling of wanting to explore another dark corner, face another impossible boss, discover another secret hidden in the depths. It's too addictive. And look, I know waiting for Silksong has been painful, but the good news is that several indie studios have captured the essence of Hollowness and created true masterpieces that will make you feel the same heavy atmosphere, the same adrenaline in combat, and that meticulous exploration that we love so much. So, prepare your heart, because these 10 new games that I brought today are not just similar. They have soul, they have challenge, and they will captivate you in the same way that the night captivated us in Hollowness. If you were captured by the dark atmosphere and intelligent challenge of Hollow Knight, then prepare to dive into Constance, a Metroidvania that is attracting attention precisely for managing to be fresh, original, and deeply engaging for those who like games loaded with personality. Right off the bat, what grabs me most in Constance is the setting. Here, you control an artist who explores an internal world, designed from the deterioration of her own mental health. This premise is powerful and is reflected in every corner of the game, from the hand-painted scenarios to the enemies that clearly represent emotions and personal memories. The great differential of Constance lies in the painting-based mechanics. The combat revolves around a giant brush, which serves both to attack and to manipulate the environment, dissolving barriers, activating mechanisms, or even escaping through cracks by turning into a puddle of ink. It's as if Splatoon had met Hollow Knight in a parallel universe, but the game never loses its own charm. This translates into fluid movements and elaborate animations, with each unlocked ability giving more options for exploration and combat. And a detail, using special techniques consumes ink, and if you overdo it, Constance enters a state of corruption that begins to drain her life, requiring the player to have a strategy and self-control that is quite reminiscent of resource management in other Metroidvanias. The game strongly bets on a non-linear structure, with free exploration and many secrets scattered around the map. Curious NPCs appear along the way and give tips on where to go, but in the end, the direction is entirely decided by the player. The biomes are varied and represent aspects of the protagonist's psyche. So each area is not only visually unique, it has narrative and mechanical meaning. That is, completing each piece of the map is almost like going through different phases of a process of self-discovery. Another point that I found brilliant is the death system, which manages to balance punishment and accessibility without losing the challenge. Whenever you die, you can choose between returning to the last point of meditation, a kind of checkpoint, to recover your life or continue exactly where you left off, only with the maximum life reduced. This gives the player autonomy to be more daring or playing conservatively, depending on the mood or the challenge of the moment. Throughout my attempts, I realized that this freedom makes each gameplay session unique. Sometimes it's worth risking to not lose rhythm. Other times, the best option is to go back and replan the movements, as in classics of the genre. Speaking of accessibility, Constance does very well in balancing difficulty and fluidity. The telegraphic system of the enemies is very intuitive. Each design denounces the attack patterns. And the platform, even with more demanding sections, never seems unfair. And when you master the mechanics of painting, dodging, and manipulating obstacles, the feeling of flow is similar to that of Celeste. That magical moment where control seems like an extension of thought. The visual, with elaborate biomes and ink effects around the map, is one of those that makes you want to pause just to admire every detail of the scenery. If your heart beats strong for Metroidvanias, with introspective narrative, progressive challenge, and a unique artistic vibe, Constance is mandatory on your list. It's not just a tribute to Hollow Knight or Celeste. It's a journey about creativity versus self-sabotage, about perseverance and balance. In the end, it's the kind of game that makes you rethink your own paths and choices while having real fun in every combat and platform. Possessors, is a game you need to know. Developed by Heart Machine, the studio behind the acclaimed Hyper Light Drifter, it delivers a fast-paced side-scroller action experience with combat inspired by platform fighting games like Super Smash Bros. The protagonist, Luca, who loses her legs in a disaster in a dystopian megacity called Sanzu, makes a pact with a demon to recover her body and understand what happened in the city, which already creates a dense and mysterious narrative from the beginning. Combat is where Possessors really shines for me. Unlike traditional Metroidvanias that tend to focus more on direct attacks, here you have a set of aerial combos, grabs with a rope that pulls enemies, parry to reflect projectiles, and a lot of fluidity in the movement, including wall jumps and dash in the air. The feeling is of a game that demands mastery and precise timing, with the right amount of difficulty for those who like intense challenges, close to the Souls-like style with checkpoints where the world regenerates and you need to manage your resources carefully. A personal highlight is the game's setting. Sanzu City, a devastated futuristic megacity, delivered full of ruins, abandoned hospitals, collapsed skyscrapers, and corporate facilities, all with a minimalist but impressive visual, which mixes 3D graphics with hand-drawn characters. This decadent and near-apocalyptic setting conveys an oppressive and mysterious atmosphere, which reminded me of the dark tone of Hollow Knight, but with its own identity, very influenced by science fiction, mixing technology and horror in a very effective way. The exploration follows the more classic model of the genre, but with a large and interconnected world, full of secrets, alternative paths, and upgrades that unlock new areas. The narrative is also open and branching, with multiple endings based on the choices you make along the way, which adds more weight to the experience. Following the stories of the surviving NPCs in the midst of the catastrophe gives the game a human and emotional side that fits perfectly with the heavy tone of the scenario. The overall fluidity of the gameplay has its moments of rigidity, especially in interactions with walls or in more technical movement, but these details did not hinder my overall immersion. Possessors manages to deliver moments of pure flow where you combine attacks, movement, and dodges in an almost choreographed way, in a lethal dance against monstrous enemies and challenging bosses. This combination of combat with fast platforming was what conquered me the most, especially for maintaining a visceral and strategic approach at the same time. If there's a name that resonates loudly among Metroidvania fans, it's Bloodstained, the series that emerges as a spiritual continuation of the old-school Castlevania. With Bloodstained: The Scarlet Engagement, we are welcomed into an atmospheric and dark prequel set in a 16th century England, wrapped in a gothic 2.5D vibe that manages to be scary and charming at the same time. The game is focused on two protagonists, Leonard and Alexander, who unite against the demonic dominion of Lord Elias inside the ethereal castle, the largest map ever seen in the series, full of secrets, deadly traps, and voracious enemies. What caught my attention in this Bloodstained is the dynamic exchange system between the two characters, each with specific styles, weapons, and statistics. The strategy at the time of combat is not only in your reflexes, but in knowing how to alternate control to make the best use of Leonard and Alexander's abilities. The game also brings a strong crafting component, with ingredients collected around the map to create upgrades and equipment that make a difference in the unfolding of battles and exploration. This duo works as an inseparable team on the journey to defeat evil, which makes the gameplay much more interesting for those who like to momentarily change the strategic approach during the adventure. Speaking of combat, it maintains the classic Metroidvania style with modern touches. Agile attacks, combinations of magical and physical weapons, and challenging bosses that require attention, preparation, and mastery of the mechanics. In addition, the opportunity to equip different armor and enchantments for each character helps to create personalized builds, whether focusing on defense, melee attack, or magic. What I liked most here was the balance between exploration, strategy, and action, which keeps the adrenaline always at the right measure and brings that familiar, almost nostalgic taste, which made Bloodstained conquer so many players. In the visual and sound question, the game bets on a style that mixes 2.5D elements with cel-shaded graphics for characters and scenarios, which creates a unique aesthetic, although with criticisms for the visual incoherence in some older cutscenes. Even so, the gothic climate and the setting are very well worked, contributing to that suffocating and mysterious sensation that every good gothic Metroidvania must have. The soundtrack and effects also help to keep the player immersed in this decadent world, which seems to breathe a heavy atmosphere, perfect for battles against demonic forces. In addition, the narrative deserves to be highlighted for its cinematographic script, with well-crafted dialogues and interactions between the two protagonists and other characters, all available in dubbing in both English and Japanese. The story has a dark tone, focused on the desperate fight against the reign of evil while exploring themes of redemption, sacrifice, and courage in a world overwhelmed by demonic chaos. This brings an extra layer of depth for fans who like to dive not only into the gameplay, but also into the context and lore of the Bloodstained universe. Mio Memories in Orbit is one of those surprises that caught me off guard. The game takes place on a gigantic spaceship called Vessel, where you control Mio, a curious little robot, trying to restore the ship's memory and discover its purpose while facing corrupted machines. What already conquered me right from the start was the visual, which is simply wonderful, with hand-painted scenarios full of details and a color palette that leaves everything with a melancholic and unique futuristic atmosphere. The combat in Mio is a high point for me, although the game is challenging and does not have traditional difficulty modes. The gameplay requires patience and precision, with aerial combos and attacks that you can chain to stay in the air, creating a fluid feeling that is very reminiscent of the style of the best Metroidvanias with technical combat. Just like in Hollow Knight, you have the constant feeling that each enemy has a pattern, and each battle is a choreography that requires total attention to win, especially against the bosses that test your mastery of the abilities. Something that brought a lot of depth to me is the resource management system, represented by the currency called Nacre. You use this currency to heal, improve skills, and buy buffs at the save points. But when you die, you lose everything you carry, unless you have crystallized this currency in specific machines. This creates a constant tension about when to risk advancing or retreating to guarantee your progress, which is rare and made me feel death with a real importance, unlike many games where dying is just an inconvenience. Another charm of the game is the exploration experience that reminded me of the classics of the genre, but with modern touches and a world that seems alive and full of details. The vessel ship is a huge labyrinth, with dangerous areas and secret passages, and several robots that you can repair and interact with, which helps to give life and narrative to this environment. I loved how each corner of the world presents unique challenges, both on the platform and in the fight, with varied biomes and obstacles that test your movement ability and patience. Visually, the game is a true spectacle. The handmade animations and the artistic direction create a universe that looks like an illustrated book in motion, full of vivid colors, bright lights, and an impressive sense of scale. All this with few developers on the team, which makes everything even more admirable. The soundtrack and the audio effects, which accompany the environments and the battles, complement the immersion in a very efficient way, helping to create this mysterious and exciting climate that you feel all the time. For those looking for a Metroidvania that is not only pretty in art, but that brings challenge, narrative, and a combat experience that rewards study and skill. Myo Memories in Orbit is one of those games that you can't leave aside. The combination of its dense atmosphere, intelligent mechanics, and a rewarding exploration puts it on the immediate radar of any Hollow Knight fan who wants a next step in a sci-fi universe artistically stunning and emotionally impactful. If you like Metroidvanias that dare to leave the traditional visual pattern and bet on a bold artistic direction, Rose and Locket needs to be on your radar immediately. Developed by a duo from New Zealand, Roger in art and Ryan in programming, the game throws you into the shoes of Rose, a bounty hunter from the Old West who sees her daughter Rosebud imprisoned inside a magical medallion by an evil spirit. To free her, Rose is forced to make a pact with Envy, a being from the underworld, and hunt the 7 great sins through the dark realms of the Underwest, a supernatural and macabre version of the classic Western. The visual of the game is pure art in motion, literally looking like a graphic novel coming to life on your screen. Each scene is worked as if they were comic panels, with dynamic transitions, onomatopoeias appearing on the screen, and a vibrant color palette that changes as you advance through the different realms. What caught my attention the most was how the artistic direction directly influences the gameplay. In some sections, the screen is divided into separate panels, and you literally platform from one panel to another, creating a unique experience that few games manage to deliver with so much personality. Speaking of gameplay, Rose and Locket moves away a bit from the traditional Metroidvania and strongly embraces the run-and-gun mechanics with twin-stick controls. You aim with the right analog stick and shoot with the triggers, alternating between revolver, faster, shorter range, and rifle, slower, longer range, in addition to being able to use dynamite and special abilities like Fan the Hammer, which fires all 6 projectiles from the revolver at once. The combat is frantic and requires quick reflexes, combining precise shots with dodges and double jumps. And the second jump propels you at a diagonal angle, which brings an interesting learning curve to master the movement. A point that I loved in Rose and Locket is the narrative depth and the constant dialogues. Unlike many run-and-guns that are just pure action, here the story matters and the characters have personality. Throughout the journey, Rose talks to her daughter through the medallion, which keeps the child's personality alive, creating touching moments amidst the chaos. Even the bosses interact verbally with you during the battles, provoking, threatening, and mocking your abilities. This narrative layer adds emotional weight to the adventure and keeps you engaged not only in the action, but also in Rose's personal journey to save her daughter. The boss fights are true cinematic highlights. The battle against Wrath, the first of the great sins, is divided into multiple segments. First, you fly in a coffin dodging meteors and bullets, then you need to dodge coffins being thrown from all angles, and finally face Wrath himself unloading a rain of shots in his face. These moments are intense, challenging but fair, and leave that taste of epic victory when you finally knock down the enemy. The structure of cinematic set pieces along with the constant action makes each encounter memorable. In the end, if you are looking for a game that combines the exploration and progression of a Metroidvania with the frantic action of a run-and-gun, all wrapped in a breathtaking visual inspired by comic books, Rose and Locket is absolutely mandatory. It's a game that breathes personality in every frame, tells an exciting story about maternal sacrifice, and still delivers a sharp and addictive gameplay. For fans of the genre who want something different but equally exciting, this adventure through the Underwest will captivate you from beginning to end.
We shall seize your soul, Rose, thinking we are most battle path.
If you're a fan of colorful and personality-filled Metroidvanias, Lone Fungus Melody of Spores is a sequel that shouldn't be off your radar. This prequel to the acclaimed Lone Fungus takes you thousands of years before the events of the first game, where you control Greencap's ancestor on a journey to unite the mushroom tribes in an interconnected world full of secrets and challenges. What grabs me right away is the change in tone. Unlike the dark Metroidvanias that dominate the genre, here you'll find a vibrant, colorful, and charming universe without losing the depth and complexity that we expect from a game of this style. The combat and melody of Spores is a significant upgrade from the first game, bringing an 8-direction system in the classic Castlevania style combined with sub-weapons, but maintaining that modern, fast, and fluid movement that makes all the difference. If in the first lone Fungus you couldn't attack upwards because of the character's giant hat, genius detail by the way, here the combat is more versatile and allows attacks in all directions, in addition to integrating spells and abilities that serve both for exploration and for facing enemies. This freedom brings a much richer and more strategic combat dynamic, especially against the more than 30 bosses that the game promises to deliver. Something that won me over in the first game and that returns here are the quality of life mechanics that respect the player's time. The life system is unique. When you die, you respawn in the same room, and only after 3 deaths do you return to the last save point. But if you don't like this mechanic, you can disable it in the menu. The map is also customizable. If you like the save to update map system of Hollow Knight, it's there. If you prefer an instant map, just activate it in the options. In addition, there are 50 customizable markers with various different icons for you to mark secrets, unexplored areas, or whatever you want, which makes it much easier when searching for 100% completion. Exploration is where Melody of Spores really shines for me. The world design is extremely non-linear, allowing you to face bosses and progress in varied orders. If you hit a wall in one area, simply explore another path. The creative use of magic as exploration tools is the great differentiator. Instead of the typical dash, double jump, and wall climb that every Metroidvania has, here you use spells in surprising ways to unlock new areas. This unique approach makes each acquired power open unexpected possibilities, keeping the feeling of discovery always fresh and rewarding throughout the entire journey. The visual aspect in 16-bit pixel art is elaborate and full of life, with each biome of the mushroom world bringing its own visual identity and unique enemies. The colorful and welcoming artistic direction contrasts perfectly with the complexity of the gameplay and the depth of the lore, which explores mythology and connections between different elements of the universe in a surprisingly elaborate way for a game with such a cute visual. The soundtrack is pleasant and fits well with the atmosphere of the game, even if it's not the most striking point of the experience. If you're looking for a Metroidvania that perfectly balances challenge, freedom of exploration, and accessibility, all wrapped up in a colorful and charismatic presentation, Melody of Spores is a surefire choice. The game respects your time with customization options, rewards meticulous exploration with secrets hidden everywhere, and delivers memorable boss fights that test your skills without frustrating you. For those who loved Hollow Knight but want something with a more luminous and welcoming vibe without losing depth, this adventure through the Mushroom Kingdom will positively surprise you from beginning to end. If you're looking for a compact, challenging, and to-the-point Metroidvania, Little Droid 2 Escape can be an interesting experience, albeit with its limitations. Following in the footsteps of the first Little Droid, this game puts you in control of a small robot that needs to escape from a mysterious planet full of traps, enemies, and secrets. The premise is simple and doesn't drag on. Explore an interconnected 2D pixel art world, defeat bosses to gain new abilities, and discover the mysteries behind this abandoned place. The combat and movement follow a more traditional and minimalist line than the big names in the genre. You have your basic shot. You can switch between different types of ammunition, like green curved bullets and red direct projectiles, and you need to constantly manage your energy as the droid discharges and becomes slow when the battery runs out. The double jump and dash are your main movement tools, and although the game doesn't reinvent the wheel, the simplicity works for an experience that doesn't want to drag on too much. The bosses are the highlight, requiring patience and timing, especially when you haven't unlocked all the movement abilities yet. A point that bothered me a lot in the first game, and that seems to remain here, is the difficulty balancing. In hard mode specifically, the game can become frustrating instead of challenging, with forced energy farming after each death and enemies that drain your life quickly. The recommendation is to play on normal, where the experience flows better and you can focus on exploration without getting unnecessarily angry. The energy mechanic that needs to be constantly recharged can be irritating, especially in moments of intense combat where you become practically immobilized if you run out of battery. Exploration follows the classic Metroidvania playbook, an interconnected map with more than 20 secret rooms, maximum life upgrades scattered everywhere, and areas that can only be accessed after defeating specific bosses. The world includes secret bunkers, deep dungeons, mysterious forests, and alien facilities, each with its own challenges and enemies. For a small and accessible game, the amount of content is reasonable, and the hunt for 100% completion can take between 5 to 6 hours if you explore everything calmly. Visually, the game relies on functional pixel art, but without great prominence. It's not ugly, but it's also not surprising. It fulfills its role of transmitting the necessary information without drawing much attention. The soundtrack, on the other hand, is an unexpected positive point, with pleasant songs that accompany the atmosphere of solitary space exploration well. It's one of those cases where the audio surpasses the visual presentation and helps to maintain the mood even when the graphics don't impress. In the end, Little Droid 2 Escape is the kind of Metroidvania that works best as a quick and direct experience for those who want something less compromising. Don't expect the depth of Hollow Knight or the fluidity of larger games in the genre. Think of it as a Metroidvania snack, short and direct, ideal for satisfying your craving between larger games. If you're a completionist and want to play all the Metroidvanias that appear or simply enjoy old-school difficulty retro challenges, it's worth checking out for the affordable price. But if you're looking for something more elaborate in narrative, mechanics, and overall polish, it might be better to pass and focus on more robust titles in the genre. If you're a fan of Metroidvanias that bring innovative and challenging mechanics, Gigasword needs to be on your radar immediately. Developed by Studio Hybrid over 5 years, the game puts you in the shoes of Ezra, a lone warrior who wields a gigantic and incredibly heavy sword on a desperate mission to climb the ancestral Nestrium Tower in search of the divine crystal called Gnosis, humanity's last hope in a world devastated by famine and disease. What won me over right away was precisely the central mechanic. The sword is not just a weapon, It's a literal burden that shapes every step of your journey, making the gameplay unique and strategic. The great thing about Gigasword is how the weight of the sword influences absolutely everything. When you're holding the weapon, Ezra moves slower and has limited jumps, but can attack enemies and use the sword to activate mechanisms like pressure plates. Now, when you drop the sword on the ground, Ezra gets faster, jumps higher, and can carry other objects, but becomes completely defenseless. This dynamic creates extremely creative puzzles, where you need to stab the sword into heavy boxes to move them, leave it on platforms to keep doors open, or simply abandon it temporarily to reach inaccessible areas. It's brilliant how this simple mechanic unfolds into complex and rewarding challenges. If you're looking for a Metroidvania that balances intense action with clever puzzles, all tied together by a unique mechanic that really transforms the way you play, Gigasword is absolutely essential. The gameplay based on the weight of the sword isn't a silly gimmick. It's a central idea that permeates every aspect of the design, creating situations that demand both reflexes and reasoning. For fans of Hollow Knight who want something with a more puzzle-focused approach without losing the challenge and dense atmosphere, this journey through the Nestrium Tower will captivate you from beginning to end with its perfect balance between brain and brawn. Combat is also directly impacted by this weight mechanic. Each attack has a sense of weight and power that few games manage to convey so well, making you feel every blow that hits the grotesque demons that infest the tower. The variety of enemies is excellent, with each type requiring a different approach, and I lost count of how many times I got hit trying an aerial attack, only to be repelled by a flame. The bosses are another highlight, requiring precise dodges, perfect timing, and strategic use of your abilities, in an intensity that is quite reminiscent of the memorable confrontations of Hollow Knight or Blasphemous. Exploration follows the classic Metroidvania line with an interconnected world design, but adds dungeon elements in the Zelda style, mixing free exploration with more linear and puzzle-focused areas. As you progress, you unlock upgrades like thunderbolts, crawling sparks, and grappling hooks that expand your options in both combat and exploration. The progression system also includes life improvements by collecting 5 emerald feathers and offering them at save points, in addition to sword upgrades purchased with ores collected from enemies and chests. This layer of customization gives extra depth for those who like specific builds. Visually, Gigasword relies on elaborate pixel art with a dark aesthetic that combines perfectly with the melancholic tone of the narrative. The artistic direction manages to be both detailed and minimalist at the same time, conveying the feeling of a world on the verge of collapse without the need for elaborate cutscenes. The dark and atmospheric soundtrack is another high point, with songs that get stuck in your head even after you stop playing. I myself caught myself whistling the themes several times. The narrative is told subtly through environmental storytelling, reminiscent of the first Metroid games where gameplay was king and the story was revealed little by little. If you enjoy Metroidvanias that blend fluid combat with customizable build construction, Winds of Arcana Ruination is a game that deserves all your attention. Developed by Brood Games in India over 3 years, the game puts you in the role of a warrior mage seeking your former mercenary companions in a cursed land called Lirna. What won me over right away was the proposal to mix influences from Hollow Knight, Prince of Persia, and even Hades in a single 2.5D package full of personality, with a fully dubbed narrative and a combat system that allows you to create the perfect build for your play style. The weapon system is where Winds of Arcana really shines for me. You're not stuck with a single type of weapon. You can choose between balanced and versatile swords, heavy and devastating hammers, or fast and ranged chakrams, each with its own advantages and disadvantages. The progression of each weapon is unique. You unlock passive aspects, like lifesteal or attack speed, by defeating enemies with that specific weapon, which encourages experimentation and variety in gameplay. I loved being able to switch between melee and ranged weapons in the middle of the fight, adapting my strategy as the enemy or situation requires. Magic also has a central role in combat. The game offers ancient and devastating powers that you can mix and match with your weapons to create completely different builds. Some powers annihilate crowds, others are focused on bosses, and some directly enhance your equipped weapon. This freedom of customization is quite reminiscent of Hollow Knight's charm system, but here it has an even greater weight in the way you play, allowing builds focused on pure magic, brutal melee combat, or a balanced hybrid between the two. Exploration follows the classic Metroidvania playbook with an interconnected map full of secret rooms, hidden collectibles, and platforming puzzles that reward attention to detail. The game delivers traditional movements like dash, double jump, glide, and grappling hook. But the way these movements integrate with combat and exploration is what makes the difference. During my experience with the demo, I found myself several times exploring obscure corners behind legendary weapons and hidden powers, and the feeling of discovering a secret area or defeating a difficult boss is extremely satisfying. The game relies on a 2.5D style that mixes elements of dark fantasy with touches of Indian culture, creating a unique visual identity that stands out in the sea of pixel art Metroidvanias. The animations are fluid, the attacks have weight and impact, and the scenarios are varied with different biomes that keep exploration always interesting. The sound design also deserves praise. The atmospheric soundtrack transforms into intense songs during boss battles, creating that dynamic contrast that keeps the adrenaline high at the right moments. The team even hired the voice actor from Assassin's Creed to bring the characters to life, which shows the care taken with the production. For fans of Hollow Knight who want something with more focus on combat variety and character customization, this journey through the cursed land of Lyrna will captivate you from beginning to end with its balanced mix of action, exploration, and progression.
He's here.
You didn't take all day.
Easy when there's a strong stench to follow.
Pity I must make you regret finding me.
You can certainly try, Father.
If you enjoy Metroidvanias with aggressive combat and an interesting progression system, Kotama and Academy Citadel is a game that needs to be on your radar. Developed by Atom String Games and published by 2P Games, the game puts you in the shoes of Kotama, a mysterious exchange student who arrives at the Academy Citadel during the election for the Star of Carmel, the greatest achievement possible in this futuristic high-tech academy. What caught my attention right away was the mix of vibrant anime aesthetics with rendered 3D and dynamic 2D characters, all set in a sci-fi school where only the strongest survive and students battle each other for prestige and power. Combat is where Kotama really shines for me, with a unique coding system that turns aggressiveness into strategy. As you attack enemies, a layer of purple fluid accumulates on them, and when they become saturated enough, indicated by a purple outline, you can execute a special piercing attack that drains this color and causes massive damage. The brilliant thing is that this draining movement also recharges your shield, creating an addictive cycle of constant pressure, attack, defense, and healing through offense. Kotama is fragile and can't take much damage, so you need to master the system of parrying, dodging, and these draining attacks to survive. It's pure adrenaline from start to finish. In addition, the game incorporates bullet time combo mechanics that allow you to create your own combat style by mixing weaponry, chip runes, and fluid-based abilities. The feeling is of a frenetic combat that requires precision, quick reflexes, and perfect timing, reminiscent of the intensity of Hollow Knight but with a more aggressive and offensive approach. The bosses promise to be challenging and require you to completely master the mechanics before facing them, which adds a satisfying difficulty curve for those who like to be tested. Exploration follows the classic Metroidvania playbook, with an interconnected map full of secrets, hidden walls, and areas that can only be accessed with specific abilities. What I found brilliant is that the map marks your next destination, even if you haven't discovered that area yet. And you can even find students along the way who literally have the map with them and fill in the data for you. This attention to the player's quality of life keeps the pace fast and avoids that frustrating feeling of getting lost without direction, allowing you to focus on the fun of exploration instead of wandering aimlessly. An interesting element that adds depth to the game is the social layer. You can help classmates, gain their trust, and recruit allies who directly influence how the story unfolds. There are even hidden students scattered around the academy who can help you if you dedicate time to finding them. This relationship mechanic gives a constant reason to explore every corner of the school, turning every corridor and secret room into an opportunity to build your reputation and strengthen your position in the dispute for the Star of Carmel. If you are looking for a Metroidvania that mixes intense combat with intelligent exploration and a vibrant sci-fi anime aesthetic, Kotama and Academy Citadel promises to deliver a unique experience. The coding and draining system creates an addictive combat loop that rewards controlled aggressiveness, exploration, respects your time with quality-of-life mechanics, and the futuristic setting in a competitive academy offers a refreshing scenario for the genre. For fans of Hollow Knight, Ender Lilies, and Tuhu Luna Knights who want something with a more energetic and modern vibe, this journey through the Academy Citadel is well worth keeping an eye on.